the people. I'm introducing our game of what I guess I'm calling Whimsical Ways, just a spin on the source game that it's based on, which is Legendary Lives. And it is following up on my experience with the game, which does promote an extremely quirky, whimsical fantasy. I suppose you could say of its setting, but more accurately because of whatever combination of variables have come up during character creation, so that every table's use of it is its own kind of distinctive sub whimsy of the big whimsy. So in this hack of it that I've done, I've totally changed up all of the content. So it's my array of what the game calls race options, type options, shifted away the emphasis on deistic magic into some more social kind of fantasy science fiction-y stuff. There's robots, for example. I've explained how. What do they run on? Whatever. Shut up. Okay. I mean, this is underground cartooning robot. He walked on, so he's powered on something. Okay. What in the base game is a very elaborate subroutine of herbal phenomena. In this game, I'm sort of repurposing those principles into tech salvaging. There's bug tech and robot tech and some little steam tech. And overall, though, I mean, it's fantasy with all these little trappings thrown in and around there. Okay, so that's the game. I'm not really pitching it to you so much as explaining what on earth you're looking at all. In our game, to cut straight to it, we have two player characters. One of them, played by Noah, is, I'm calling it a Vargar, but that's a terrible, terrible name for it because it actually translates into a real word pronounced differently in Swedish, and that's no good. So it was supposed to be a spin on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Vaga from his Moonmaid novels. And they're they're a great Burroughs creature. They are four-footed. They are not centaurs. But their faces are very human-like, with human-like hair, savage and flowing, fanged mouths. And their front feet, which they will run on, are also manipulative. So, you'll have one of them galloping, on 3 feet, with a spear held up, stuff like that. They wear armor when they want to. I mean, they're pretty good Burroughs savages, right? They're very, very fascinating. In another regard, they're cannibalistic. They eat each other in the context of tribal warfare. So if two tribes that clash, fight, then salvaging the bodies and eating them is fine. They're also fine with eating humans and other meat sources. And so in the books, that's cool and everything. There's a whole bunch of plot elements that come out of that. But for my purposes, I'm kind of just spinning them here as another, whacked option to be playing. The barbarian's barbarian, if you will. And then the other character, played by Helma, she rolled a robot. And so therefore, right off the bat, we don't have any of the imperial structure of the options. We don't have the home imperials, the provincial imperials, the villagers who are separable into the sort of assimilationist, barbarians into the empire, and then the free barbarians-ish, and then the tribes who also have their kind of, we get along with the empire tribes and we don't tribes. So there's this whole sort of, concentric circles around the empire set of humans. And then I have these little weirdos scattered in 4 or 5 different sorts of weirdos, two of which became the player characters only. So therefore it's when I said, the whimsy, specifically inside the bigger whimsy, and we're pretty deep into the weird with these guys. Just to let you know that it's not all just, oh, the humans over there. No, the Imperials are, sort of your kind of ridiculous hybrid of, 19th century Brit and pseudo classical Greece. But they've got bushy mustaches, right? It's a big thing. Everybody, gender unspecified, has a bushy mustache in the Imperium. So that's kind of fun. But anyway, the point here is that looking at these two characters and their backgrounds, the way this game works, and it's pretty silent in Legendary Lives. So what I've done is extracted my practices of making that game playable in terms of coming up with, what do we do here? And actually made them written them out as procedure here. So it's extremely character centric. You look at these characters and you have to ask questions like, well, they've got these vivid backgrounds and each one kind of culminates in a goal of the moment. And they've all been made independently. And there's so much dice rolling in making the characters and whatever. I mean, you just have to ride the tiger and find out what you get after making a couple of critical personal decisions through it as well. So you really have a sense of ownership. So here I sit with, 2+ players, in this case 2+ players, each with this vivid character, ready to go and driving at what they want. And you're going, oh man, what is this? How is this a party? Well, that's the question. Basically, there's a whole spectrum from they aren't, they're just in the same place, all the way over to they are. And interestingly enough, the more you go toward that direction, the more you can scatter the place a little bit if the nature and circumstances of the characters seem to dictate. If they don't have anything in common, which is kind of hard to believe, but if they didn't, then they would absolutely necessarily be in the same place. And I think it's a good idea for them to be in the same place anyway. But how do you hook them together? Well, their lifelines during character creation are chock full of non-player characters who some are highly specific and some are rather vague or implied. It's not too terrible to, find here and there some places where, oh, if that guy is this guy, then it works. That can be overdone. I mean, there's a way of tightening everybody's little interlocking parts so that the party becomes its mechanism of, various desires, goals, and things in this very elaborate way. And don't go that far, but I do think that you can look at it and say, oh, look, well, in the case of these two characters, they each had rolled that they had traveled to a place that everybody else just refuses to believe exists. So the idea that they had, gone there together, they'd met in their travels either to get there or had arrived there and met each other there and are now traveling back, is quite reasonable. Each one had stuck that event close to or at the end of their lifelines. So it was great. You're like, oh, look, well, that's super easy. I mean, they rolled the same thing out of all these options. So, okay, that put them there. And it's the kind of thing that works out pretty nicely to say is the same for each. Aside from that, there's a variety of interesting things. Both characters, Whimsical Ways, it's a joke name, okay, working title, and it's not a publication project. Whimsical Ways, just to call it that, is very similar to Legendary Lives in that the characters' religious backgrounds are fairly intense, and the religions that the characters belong to are various. Each one is full of different factions and different controversies or concerns. So therefore, when you roll a character and you get that race and you go and you look at the religion, well, there's subroutine rolls in there about the factions and stuff like that. And then you have that religious lifeline, which is sort of your personal deal with that. The Vargar character ended up with a relic that contains, secret ancient magic. And the robot turns out that there's a relationship with a religious non-player character. Anyway, there's all sorts of things. Oh yeah, and the Vargar also has a lover who's a wealthy religious leader. So the cultural background on religion for these characters is extremely vivid, in the idea that they had this mystic journey to this place, this intense place that no one else believes they've been there or could have gone there, is very sort of, spirit questy sounding. So the religions involved are both amusing. I kind of went to town on the religious mischief for this game. And in this case, the robots, various faiths or sects of the robot religious experience. Oh, by the way, when I say robot, you say, oh, well, do they have feelings? Do they have souls? How do they think? Is like an AI? Shut up. They're characters, all the emotions, all the thinking, everything. Okay. Just quit it with your stuff there. Anyway, what do they concern themselves with? Spiritually, socially, because remember, there's no deistic magic in this. So it's not like, they do miracles or anything. So for the robots, borrowing a little bit from Roger Zelazny's Creatures of Light and Darkness, I said one sect is called the Great Castration, because you see, to the robots, at least according to the religions that they've built up, humans are the reproductive method of robots. So basically they think of the humans as sort of collectively, robotdom's genitalia. So what do you do? Okay, there's the Great Castration, which says we need to rise above the sinful flesh, literally in this case, and find a way, that we can reproduce and make more robots and stuff without depending on these nasty, shameful even. So there's kind of this puritanical Great Castration thing going on with some of the robots. And then another way of looking at it is called, what did I call it? The Holy... well, anyway, the other point of view, though, was very different and was all about how we take care of these... how we take care of these beings. We have to take care of them and make sure, that they do their proper job. And that's the sect that Helma's character belongs to. The Holy Flesh. That's it. Right. So anyway, as far as the Vargar are concerned, you're going to have to get used to me wincing every time I say that, because I know I'm about to change it to something. I want it to be reminiscent of the original term Vaga, but I haven't done it yet. Well, anyway, religious-wise, I was inspired by the cartoon Oglaf, who, in that cartoon, occasionally features this god called Sithrak. Now, Sithrak is hilarious because Sithrak hates everybody and is going to punish everybody horribly with terrible tortures for eternity after they die, and does. That's what Sithrak does. And the worshippers of Sithrak find this quite liberating. They're like, well, yeah, we're all going to get it. But it's not like he hates you personally. And you feel good. You live your life how it is. You're going to get it. Yeah, when you die, you're going to hell. Hell's terrible. It's as bad as anything you ever heard, and worse. But hey, worship Sithrak, the deity that frees you of, afterlife responsibility. And so in the cartoon, it's kind of funny. You have these evangelists who go around, you're like knocking on doors, trying to convince people to worship Sithrak. And so sometimes making a surprisingly good case for it. Well, anyway, so I was thinking, well, the Vaga, that'd be kind of funny. And so they have kind of that point of view. And then I said, well, what about the different sects? Well, the Catholics and Protestants, of course. We've got the ritualized, the fancy hats and the robes and the books and the debates, is this catechism or is this, commentary or is this text, all that kind of stuff going on. And then you have sort of the Protestants who are like, no, everybody, worships the God, in their own way. You arrive at that relationship, yourself. And so you have exactly this same philosophical religious schism over a god who hates everybody and is going to torture everybody, forever after they die, according to these people, which I think is all kinds of hilarious. All right, so looking at their characters, it seems to make lovely sense that they have come back to Theoxa Ag's Vargar tribe. She wants to marry her lover, the religious leader, and she wants to help 13, the robot, get back home because 13 wants to go and cope with this religious crisis and religious persecution that she had suffered. That they, 13, had suffered prior to the events of play. That's all in the lifelines. So they're both, pretty religiously oriented in terms of their culture and what they're after. And they both have a difficult to articulate account of going to that mysterious place and feel strongly, about telling people about it, both of them. So anyway, we're at the Vargar tribe and, looking down the road to say, when will 13 and Theox is going to help her go off to her place, but stopping off here. So Theoxa Ag, the Vargar, is this monstrous two-handed sword because her character type is a specialist, which means you have an awesome, unique weapon. And I'm going all the way with it based on some fantasy where you have this weird weapon and it's full of surprises. I mean, you can wield it, backwards and it has different properties or has compartments, right? And then the knife, pops out and you use that for close fighting, or any number of things. I'm thinking of the cloak fighter in James Caan's novels where, the cloak is just, he fights with it. He throws things from it. He covers himself with it when the basilisk breathes poison fog on him and he's fine. The cloak is just do fucking anything. And so this two-handed sword is kind of like that. And that's Theoxa Ag is, an expert with this unique weapon. And since what the character treasures, according to the tables, is this relic. The character had also been imprisoned for theft and said, well, obviously I stole this relic. And Noah says, and I got it built into the hilt of the sword. So this sword is all kinds of metal. I mean, just imagine the most ridiculous, two-handed sword, wielded by this fanged, hand four-pawed, savage, humanoid-faced, cat/horse type creature. And it's an album waiting to happen. And then you got this robot. Now, what's the robot's type? First of all, the robot's actual in-setting background is a scullion. And the tables also tell us that 13 is bedraggled. So we are not talking about a very prepossessing, robot. But character type, the helmet shows, killer. So, badass assassin. Completely capable of knowing, locating someone they want dead, being in the right place at the right time, taking them down. So, all kinds of, sudden strike and all sorts of other interesting things. And so, but on the other hand, 13 looks like a kind of a junky, not very well kept robot, who's good at cleaning floors. So, anyway, as you can see, that continues. Popping them into the Vargar tribe is what I said. Okay, given where you guys are, what you've done, what it's clear that you've done together, how about we put you at the Vargar tribe? And your goals line up real nicely there. We've got Theoxa Ag's very local goals and then the goal to get back to, where 13 comes from. So, all set. Okay, that's about enough probably to, start you off with us. The first video is audio only because two of us were not in our ordinary places and had, other people's, property behind us on the screen. And so I just decided to, instead of having one person there gesticulating and talking to two blank spots, I said, all right, we're just going full audio. I threw in the maps and stuff that we used and so forth. So enjoy. I'll chat a little bit as well at the end. with another little video talking a bit about how we played, how it went, some of the features of playing, the rules changes, and new concepts that I've brought into the basic skeleton of Legendary Lives for Whimsical Ways.